Hello, everybody, and my name is Jimmy Smith. Welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. This is a session which is available on YouTube as free content on the Wine with Jimmy YouTube channel, and also available on the e-learning portal on the winewithjimmy.com website, which is a fantastic resource portal for all of you studying your WSET courses. So this is actually a fortified section for the WSET Level 4, the diploma. So this is the Unit 5 or D5 of the diploma. And this is going to be on Vin Doux Naturel, the naturally sweet wine that is fortified from the south of France. And this is part 1. On the growing environment, a little bit on history, growing environment, grape growing, including the grape varieties as well. If you do have any comments, questions or concerns, please do get in touch either by commenting below on the YouTube channel in the comments section, or getting in touch via the social media that you find on every slide, or by the winewithjimmy.com website. So let's rock and roll for our part 1 of Vin Doux Naturel. So there's a beautiful view of the Banyuls area, very beautiful part of the landscape in Roussillon. Very lovely zone indeed. The term, first of all, Vin Doux Naturel, it describes a category in French wine which is sweet. Of course, it means wine sweet naturally. And that's the addition with spirit. So it is a fortified wine, a fortified sweet wine, often made of grape varieties like Muscat and Grenache. There are quite a few PDOs, so your protected designation of origins, or AOCs, for these wines that spread across Roussillon, Languedoc, and the southern Rhone. 80%, that's 80% lies within the Roussillon. So famous like Banyuls, for instance, but also things like Rivesaltes as well. So that's the real hot spot for these fortified wines of France. So a little bit of history first of all, and for those of you that are studying your diploma, it is important to understand that when you come to write your theory sections in your examinations, if you just verbatim learn word for word the stuff that is supplied to you via WSET, it will get you a pass. But if you wanted to get a higher mark, you need to show what WSET called flair. And that is the fact that you have done some additional reading around the subject. So that's what I include on some of these presentations, is a little bit of extra information, which could be, I suppose, described as flair. First of all, we're going to look at a little bit of flair here, which is not within your text. And that is around the history of fortified wines within the south of France and within France as a total. So you'll see that there is a picture here. So this is Arnaud de Villeneuve, or Villanova, as he was known as well. So Arnaud de Villeneuve, or Villeneuve, was a director at the University of Montpellier, also practicing in terms of an alchemist, a physician as well, and a doctor also at the Count of Mallorca. He is the one who discovered the art of mutage, and I'll put that in just here. So let me just scribble this here. Mutage. And mutage is the addition of grape spirit to wine to fortify it. And this, as the date suggests, that there was 1285. So this is very, very early on and before our other fortified wines. So the creation of this fortified style begins here in the south of France. And this was at the Templar vineyard in the south of France. And a little bit around the popularity of these wines is that when the Kingdom of Mallorca, which is today Roussillon as well, so when it was a bit more of a larger kingdom, when it came into France in 1659, the king, the famous Sun King, which is Louis XIV, remember of Versailles fame, who pretty much reigned throughout most of the 17th century, certainly around, I think, I think he was born in the early 1630s or something like that. He served these fortified wines, to his guests at Versailles. And also the philosopher Voltaire, very famous philosopher, who was the one who said that the Holy Roman Emperor is neither holy nor Roman or an empire. He also remarked on the wines, these fortified wines, and also the US President Thomas Jefferson, who, before he was president, was an ambassador to France and lived in France for a number of years. And he also raved about the product as well. So we had some rather famous inclinations about it in the 17th century and through the 18th and 19th centuries. So quite a famous little step. Okay, so the growing environment, first of all, and as it says at the top there, it is a Mediterranean climate in this area. And we're talking about, of course, Roussillon mainly. So we're going to be identifying Roussillon as the major one, but please do remember that there are some PDOs found within Languedoc as well, like Frontignan and Lunel, for example. And also Baume de Venise, which is found within the southern Rhone. But they all share a Mediterranean climate. So Roussillon, which is down in the south of France, which is between Languedoc and then the Pyrenees, the Spanish border. Roussillon is the warmest and driest region in the whole of France, and it's influenced by a wind which comes in through the gap between the Pyrenees and also the Massif Central, the Montagne de Noir, the Black Mountain. And that's called the Tramontane wind, which is in that big arrow there above the fortress city of Carcassonne, which is quite famous down in the southern Languedoc, northern Roussillon area. So this wind leads to a greater transpiration from the grapes during the end of ripening, which of course means that it evaporates more of the water, thus concentrating more sugar in the grapes. And that's at the end of it. Bit of that desiccation of the grapes. And that's what produces that intensity of sugar, making it perfect for Vin Doux Naturel, wine natural sweet. Okay, wine sweet natural. Okay, so that's your first little step there. And the results of this then, as I just mentioned, really, is that it can be rather beneficial for the production of these wines because less spirit is needed to fortify the wine and to a certain level of alcohol. And that retains, of course, the sugar, the more residual sugar that makes it these very sweet and fortified styles. So really, for example, a grape with higher level of sugar can ferment for longer, producing more alcohol potentially, and before reaching the desired level of residual sugar in the final wine. But it does reduce yields. Of course, this desiccation of the grapes by the wind will reduce the yield as you are losing some of the water content and concentrating the grapes down. So, of course, yield will be reduced from this. Okay, so that's all really that you are required to know. Let's move on to the grape varieties, and we are looking at 3 major grape varieties. 2 of them are muscats, and 1 is a Grenache. Okay, so the first up is Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain. Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain. Now, this variety is the most widely planted in France. And that's around 8,000 hectares. So that's a little bit of flair that's added in to your text as well there. Plantings are increasing of this grape variety, and that's mainly due to the popularity of the dry, unfortified wines that are being made from this variety. But it's also being used for a bit of blending as well. The grape variety is thought to come from Greece originally. It was brought by the Greeks to the Italian peninsula. where it eventually became known as Moscato Bianco. It was first mentioned in Italy in 1304. So it's a rather big historical grape. Now, there are hundreds of muscats around the world, some of them related, some of them unrelated. But we're talking about the major variety that moved from Greece across to Italy and then beyond into the Western European zone. The name Muscat most likely derives from its kind of musky aroma. And it's similar to the musky aroma produced by a gland of the male musk deer from southern Asia, which was used around the 5th and 6th centuries AD to make a very rare fragrance. So, of course, they're linking it to something that was around at that time. So we actually think the history of Muscat goes well before the first mentions in Italy, of course. Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain is a parent of Muscat of Alexandria, which we're going to be looking at next. But just a few more things on Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain. So in comparison, it is smaller berries than the other Muscat we're about to talk about, the Muscat of Alexandria. And therefore, with smaller berries comes greater concentration. So you'll find more intensity of aroma and flavour with this variety. It is very tolerant of dry weather, hence why it is grown very abundantly and well down here. But it is susceptible to things like powdery mildew, botrytis, which can happen in the wetter years, of course, mites, and also wasps and bees are quite fond of the nectar, the kind of aroma that is given off from the grape on the vine. So that's Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain. Then we have Muscat of Alexandria, and this variety is more than likely a natural cross between the parent Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain and then a grape variety called Arzina de Tres Bias, which is nothing you'll need to know, but it's an old blackberry table grape variety from the island of Sardinia, which has probably been brought across by the Romans, by the Italians or the Greeks, or even the Phoenicians. So interesting that that's the blend between it, but Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain being a parent. About 2,500 hectares of this variety in France, but that is diminishing, that is decreasing. And those plantings are in decline because it's thought to produce wines that are less refined, they're less balanced than those from the parent variety of Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain. Okay, so what about it then? So it's larger berries, of course, than its parent, Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain, as we've mentioned many times. It's less refined, like we mentioned, less harmonious, less balanced. It is similar, though, in terms of it's tolerant of dry weather, and it can actually build up quite high sugar levels. Susceptible to everything the same as the parent variety Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain, so powdery mildew, botrytis, mites, and also wasps and bees. The third grape variety, the last of the major three, is Grenache, and we'll call it Grenache Noir, black Grenache, as there are other types of Grenaches as well. There is Grenache Blanc, there is also Grenache Gris as well, and also there's another variety called Macabeo, and Macabeo, which is from Catalonia and here in Roussillon, more likely to come from Vilafranca in Catalonia. That's also another variety which is allowed for the Vin Doux Naturel. So we just mentioned the two Muscats and Grenache Noir, but Grenache Gris, Grenache Blanc, and also Macabeo are also permitted for Vin Doux Naturel, but it's these major three that we are focusing on. Okay, so what about Grenache Noir then? Well, Grenache Noir is an early budding variety, late ripening. So if you look at those things, early budding means that it really does struggle in areas which are frost prone. And late ripening means it struggles in areas which are cool or even moderate. It is a warm and hot climate loving grape variety. It loves warmth, absolutely loves warmth. But it has really good drought tolerance. So it does very well in dry zones such as Roussillon and Languedoc, for instance. So suitable to our Mediterranean climates. It's fairly vigorous and high yielding, slightly less so in sandy soils, and it can build up quite high sugars as well. If the yields get too high, the color can get too pale. So that often has to be something which is either sort of taken care of or corrected. Susceptible to couleur, which is shedding of the blossom, downy mildew, as well as phomopsis and also botrytis as well. They can all reduce yields in the case of Grenache Noir. So there are our major three. Remember, there's also Grenache Gris, Grenache Blanc, and also Macabeo permitted. Vineyard management now, and I've picked a picture here from Roussillon, which shows some canopy management here, some fairly dense top canopy for a reason. So due to the fact that the climates here are Mediterranean and generally very warm, there is often the need for a canopy, a shady canopy, to reduce the chances of sunburn and excessive grape shriveling, so excessive passillerage and sunburn. So often you'll find a canopy being created, certainly in the instance of very young muscats, unaged, fresh style muscats, like Muscat de Risot, for instance, or most of them anyway. So certainly to keep the fresher styles. The yields for all of the appellations tend to be quite small, and the maximum tends to be around the number of 30 hectolitres per hectare. And then finally to harvesting. So by law, grapes will be picked with a minimum alcohol of 14, this is potential alcohol, of 14.8. So let me just pop that up here, 14.8. ABV potential. You are 14.8, which of course is very high. That's required to protect the sweetness really of these fortified wines. Sometimes the grapes will be picked, of course, slightly riper, but overall, really producers are trying to protect the freshness in these grapes. So over ripening them will cause problems with the freshness and the acidities. So balancing the acidities, because remember, you're going to have quite powerful aromatic wines with a lot of sugar. So protecting the acidity is often exceptionally important. So over ripeness doesn't tend to be the norm. Grapes will be, as in the picture, as you'll see, they tend to be hand harvested. And there'll be many passes through the vineyards, depending on the ripeness of the berries, of course. Late harvest and botrytis is not desired. It reduces the acidities far too much. So we are looking for only the ripe berries in this instance. Okay, so that really completes the first section of Vin Doux Naturel for the fortified section of Wine with Jimmy's WSET Level 4 Diploma. We go on to part 2, which is looking at winemaking next up. I believe it's on winemaking, yes. And then after that, part 3 will be looking at the VDN appellations, and also the wine styles, of course. Parts 2 and 3 are only available to the members of the e-learning portal on the Wine with Jimmy website. Trust me, it's a fabulous and wonderful step to purchase a subscription to the Wine with Jimmy's e-learning portal. It gives you ample opportunity to watch more and more videos to help you on your studies, prepare you and give you confidence. Plus there are flashcards and then also model answers. So 25 and 40 mark model answers on these fortified wines, which are a typicity with the WSET Diploma examinations. So thank you very much. Once again, if you have any comments, questions or concerns, please get in touch via social media or the comments on the YouTube comment section below, or by the Wine with Jimmy website. But until then, if you find yourself in London, please come and see us for a class, for a glass or a bottle. I've been Jimmy. Thank you so much.